Welcome to another episode of the Trusted Advisor podcast and video series powered by the Retail Solutions Providers Association. Our goal on the pod is to accelerate the success of today's and tomorrow's leaders in the retail IT industry. I'm Jim Roddy, back with you again. Thank you so much for joining us. So for the past several months, we've been talking with leaders about their individual leadership journeys and what they've learned along the way. And in this episode, we're going to talk leadership with Dan Brattland of COCARD Marketing Group. So COCARD has over 100 member resellers nationwide, generating more than $11 billion in annual volume. Dan has over 20 years experience in the integrated payments and hospitality technology industry. He's a frequent speaker at industry events, including RSPA's Retail Now and Inspire Leadership Conference. And he is now, as of today, a three-time Trusted Advisor guest. You can catch him also in episode 72, Sales Strategies for VARs and ISVs, and the very popular episode 97 last year on sales messaging best practices. Hey, Dan, welcome back to the Trusted Advisor.
Well, I'm really happy to be back. Thanks for having me, Jim.
Great. Always good to talk with you. And you know, when you come back, that means we're getting good feedback from our audience, and we do that every time you present. So
Thank you.
Looking forward to diving in to leadership with you. So first, I alluded to you've spoken at Retail Now. You were part of a breakout at Retail Now 2024, standing room only, and it was about competing against those VC-backed 800 number, impersonal POS providers. And so one of the quotes you have in there, and so I've been quoting you a lot, just so you know, you said, meeting expectations isn't good enough anymore. Exceeding expectations isn't good enough anymore. Customer amazement is what we need to compete today. So I guess I wanted to start there and have you maybe expand upon that, because that seems like an important lesson for leaders today in our channel. Customer amazement is what we need to compete today. Why do you say that?
Well, because, today, if you're not totally knocking the socks off of your customers by simply doing stuff that's unexpected, and it's hard to compete. In today's marketplace, the customer is expecting you to answer the phone and get back to them right away. They're expecting you to deliver customer satisfaction. That's just expected. The top companies that I know, when I look at the companies in COCARD, our top businesses, they do things that are sort of unexpected. And when you do things that are unexpected to your customers, they remember it and they appreciate it. Whether it be, overnighting something at cost, or getting in your car and driving a printer over to a merchant as an owner of the business on a weekend, that's customer amazement, and not charging them for it. You have to do certain things like that now in order to retain customers, go beyond what is expected.
Yes, and I'll just say, so I agree with that, and the data backs you up. RSPA conducts customer health checkup merchant surveys for a lot of our VAR members. We've seen the ones who have done those over the years, their scores and the customer satisfaction increases. Then we have a question, is this above what you expected, or below what you expected? And as the numbers go up, you would think the above, my expectations, but actually that what I expected number continues to grow. So again, there is data to back up. That's not just one VAR that has been cutting across definitely for several years. So I want to learn more about your personal leadership journey first, because you're such a highly acclaimed coach and advisor for our industry. But first, I just want to ask right off the bat, like, for your best leadership advice. So let's say you have only 2 or 3 minutes to talk with a leader, right? You get out of the elevator, you're walking to the show floor, you're in the airport, walking to security. What would be the 2 or 3 minute, feedback you would give? What advice would you give to a leader in our industry? What would you tell them?
Well, I would tell that leader to be true to yourself, meaning, we had this discussion in our last, whether you're a successful salesperson, are they born, or can they learn to be good in sales? Natural born leaders are the same thing. Is it nature versus nurture? And you have to really look at yourself in the mirror. I would tell anyone who's becoming into that leadership role, and say to yourself, what type of leader are you? Are you can't fake it as a leader. People will see that. They'll see right through you. There's 2 qualities that people look for in a leader, and that's respect and trust. So you have to be true to yourself. You can't fake being a motivator, So look, whether you're how you parent, how you coach, there's different styles when it comes to leadership. If you're an introvert, maybe an intellect, a quiet, you can still be a very effective leader. You don't need to be that naturally born leader that in elementary school was leading the pack at the playground. Yeah, those are natural leaders. You can still be a very effective leader and by gaining the respect and trust of the people you lead. And we're going to hopefully talk about some of those characteristics when further in this discussion today. I'd also add that lead people the way they want to be led. So many of us like to be managers and leaders the way we like to be managed or the way we like to be led. And I say the same thing in sales. I call, we often say the golden rule in sales, which is, sell unto others the way you want to be sold. And many leaders have that same quality where they just became a leader through osmosis and they have never had really any formal training. So what do? You simply lean back and lead people the way you like to be led versus the top leaders I see in every field. They're able to adapt and lead their people based on the way they want to be led. I call it the platinum rule. Instead of leading the people the way you want to be led, the platinum rule is lead people the way they want to be led. So I may have in my group here various types of individuals. Some are motivated by money. Well, then I need to create ways to give them incentives to be motivated by money. There are others that they're not really motivated by money. They're motivated by other things. So understanding who you're leading and adapting your leadership styles to those individuals, I would say are some of the key ingredients to be an effective leader.
Yeah, to build on 2 points you mentioned, one is a great book is called The CEO Next Door, and it talks about, like, I guess back when there were magazines, but now TV, right? There is this stereotypical leader and their high charisma and, dressed to a T and, fancy cufflinks and things of that nature. And that might work for some, but the CEO Next Door talks about the entire range. And so, like you said, you have to be true to yourself, not to what people expect. And it sounds like, and I ask you this follow-up, if you need to follow platinum rule, lead people the way they want to be led, you've got to really engage with them and be an excellent listener to really find out what that is. You can't just guess, here's what I assume or here's what I believe. And so I guess, can you talk about that? You and I talk about sales all the time. It's important to listen, not just pitch. Sounds like that translates perfectly from a leadership standpoint.
100%. You have to take an active role in really being curious about the people you surround yourself with, and not only at work, but in their personal lives. Talk about things outside of work. What's important to them? Is it family? Is it athletics? Is it sports? Know what motivates them and get to know them and have a sincere curiosity. Once people know that you care as a leader, they will, and you have to truly care about them. They will respond. I also would say that the top leaders that I know judge people on results. I tend to look at myself more as a player's coach. There's different types of coaching styles, and you, Jim, coming from the athletics would know this. Some athletes respond to more of an authoritative coach, disciplinary coach. Some players respond to more of a player's coach. So again, understanding what you are, I always look at within myself. So the way you gain this trust and respect from the people you lead is to take 100% responsibility for everything that they do. Meaning the top leaders I see, when they have somebody, maybe they didn't do things right or they made a mistake, instead of blaming that person, if you're the manager or you're the leader, you have to say to yourself, what did I do to cause this person to either act or do this way? Did I not give them enough training, enough knowledge? Did I not explain this to them properly? What am I doing? So looking within yourself. I remember one of the great CEOs of our time, Jack Welch from General Electric, who built that company. In his book, there was a story about one of his top managers. I think it was made a $30 million mistake, cost the company $30 million. And that manager was quoted by saying he fully expected to be fired. He went into Jack's office, and he was called in expecting to be fired. And they went over, and Jack started talking about, what we need to do. And he basically said, "I'm surprised I'm not fired." And Jack said, "Well, why would I fire you? We just spent $30 million to make sure that mistake never happens again."
Yeah.
So really looking within yourself and not putting blame on that person, and then getting to know them, like you said, getting to know who they are and what motivates them is critical.
Yeah, you have to ask yourself, what am I do if one of your direct reports acts a certain way, what am I doing to cause this behavior? That's where you have to start. Or if things aren't going well in your company, you can't say it's the economy, it's the stupid customers, it's whatever, whatever. You have to say, what am I doing to cause this behavior? Start there and then make some changes. So you talked about be true to yourself with your own leadership style. Dan, how would you describe your leadership style? Are there a few like overarching words or phrases that represent what you're striving for as a leader?
Well, there are. I have certain things I always repeat, things like never complain, never explain. When there's a situation, forward thinking is a key ingredient of effective leaders. Never looking at the situation and looking backwards, always trying to look forward. So when anyone comes in my office or whatever, I have a saying, you never complain, never explain. Let's look at the opportunity. I also have something called the 3 C's. The most effective leaders I know are able to apply these 3 C's, which are calm, cool, and collected. Because when fires are happening and things happen and travesties and there's fires to put out and problems and challenges, it's up to the leader to be the one person in the room that has to stay calm, cool, and collected. The other thing I do as a leader, I often say things like, when I explain to how to do something or what we should do, I might say, "But I could be wrong." I often am. So
Hmm.
what I find is that leaders are also very humble. They're not trying to be the smartest person in the room, and they want the people around them to participate and be involved in those decision-making processes. And I find the door opens up when I make a statement about something. Let's say I'm on a board. I sit on a board. I might say, well, maybe we should think about this, or perhaps we should do this. However, I could be wrong. I often am. And what that does is it creates a non-defensive discussion. I also have this word that I substitute in my brain whenever I feel frustrated, in order to stay calm, cool, and collected. And I substitute in my brain, Jim, the word frustration with the word fascination.
Hmm.
And I think you've heard me say this on stage.
Oh
I've
yeah.
often talked about this. I apply it to all parts of my life. And whether it be my golf game, if I hit a bad shot, I used to get really frustrated, but now I'm just fascinated. I'm fascinated how that ball could actually go, 30-yard slice like that. So it's simple phrases, like you said, things that you might constantly say and do, and that rubs off on the people around you.
Yeah, I was going to say internally, I knew what your answer was going to be about fascinating and how I'm fascinated by that. We talk about that internally as an RSPA leadership team, right? When you run into something, that's really fascinating. The one point that you brought up that you want to that I want to build on, you talked about the 3 C's: cool, calm, and collected. I'm looking. We have a document, folks can't see it on YouTube. We call it Character is Destiny. If anybody wants to email me or message me on social media, I'm more than happy to share it with you. It's a list of 18 character traits. One that you mentioned, you said how calm, cool, and collected. We have it on here as temperance, right? Self-control in communication as well as actions, self-discipline, rule your emotions, don't raise your voice or display anger, stay detached from others' disharmony, poise. And so I know why I think that's important. Why do you list that as staying cool, calm, and collected? Because a lot of people see, again, that stereotypical hard driver, pound the fist, scream, yell. Can you talk about why do you think about cool, calm, and collected? And again, temperance being important from a leadership standpoint.
I found that, whenever there's a reactive situation that is troublesome, it could be a devastating situation that occurs in your business. everyday problems, challenges that in order for your brain to open up and think about the opportunity, it's hard to do that when you're angry. So the ability, and it's a skill you have to learn, so that when anything happens, I have sort of a saying in my brain in order to keep my brain open to let's look for solutions versus let's not look for blame, and being a forward thinker, which is critical in effective leadership. Your brain has to be open to think about the opportunity. So with every challenge, there is an opportunity. And in order to do that, you can't be frustrated or angry or reactive. And the way I do that is when anything happens, I try to train my brain to say things like, that's good. This is good. This is good. You know, it could be the most amazing thing. I mentioned in my seminars that I did at RSPA, a time when my company was hacked. Our biggest fear is to be hacked by, some Russian group that got into all of our sites and all of our POS systems, and they're taking credit cards. Oh my God. So and ability to say, okay, this is good. This is good. It's not easy, Jim. But what it does is allow, and in the end, I'm not going to tell you the whole story because we don't have time here today. But in the end, years later, I look back and I said, you know what? That was actually a good thing that happened. Yes. And the ability to reduce that time frame, because we've all had terrible things happen that down the road, when we look back, we're actually happy. God, if that didn't happen, we wouldn't be doing what we are here today. So knowing that there's opportunity in every challenge allows you to be more calm, cool, and collected when those things happen.
Yeah, I can say my personal best learning experiences as a leader, the Great Recession of 08, 09. I was company president for only 2 years. We just moved into a much bigger building based on the sales growth, and things went sideways. And then in 2002, I was diagnosed with colon cancer. So you compare those two things, like any news somebody's given me now, knock on wood, that I don't get any news worse than that, right? A lot of things that happen in the business world, no worse than that, right? In fact, nothing I've come across in the past, whatever it is now, 16 years, no worse than that. I guess that's kind of the value of being an experienced leader. You get to see how things seem really bad, but if you learn from them, it can make you stronger. So the next time you run into something that's bad and has everybody panicking, you go, well, it's not going to sink the company. We're going to solve it. We're going to learn from it. I guess, is that kind of how you see it as well? Again, that the experience makes an important part.
Yes, you nailed it.
Great. I'm going to take a quick pause here to let our listeners and viewers know about the RSPA, the Retail Solution Providers Association. RSPA is North America's largest community of retail technology VARs, software providers, vendors, and distributors. To accelerate your success through an RSPA membership, email membership@gorspa.org. Also, we want to thank our sponsors who support the RSPA community and make this podcast and video series possible. Our platinum sponsor is Blue Star. Our gold sponsors are Epson, Heartland, ScanSource, and drumroll please, COCARD. Finally, want to make sure everybody knows registration is now open for Inspire 2025, the Retail IT Channel's premier leadership conference. RSPA Inspire is set for January 26th through 29th in Curacao. For more information, visit gorspa.org/inspire so you can experience networking nirvana. So you started going down the path of sharing a hacking story. I don't know if you want to share that story or something else. I'm really curious about learning, was there an experience you had early in your career that shaped you as a leader? Like I mentioned a couple, like I said, being diagnosed with cancer, going through the Great Recession. Can you talk about a learning experience or one story that stuck with you and shaped you as a leader?
Yeah, I would say in the beginning, what helped shape me as a leader when we first dive into business, and for many of us listening to this podcast now, we might be entrepreneurs we started a business, and the one thing I learned early on is that the most effective leaders are actually leaders that aren't active in micromanaging people. We all have this sort of need as a leader sometimes when we start to if it can't be done right, I'll do it myself. And we have our hands on almost every part of the business. And so I was that way when I first started. Even when I was in sales doing most of the selling for my company, I always thought I had to do my own prospecting, my own appointment setting, because I didn't think anyone could do that better than myself. What I learned was I thought I'd experiment. I said, well, why don't I just try hiring someone to make these phone calls and set appointments, and not, I left. I brought somebody on. I told them what to say, and I didn't even expect them to do well. I came back. They had set 4 appointments for me. That was a mind blower. Wait a minute. Maybe there are other people that can do this, and maybe they can do it better than me. And so that really helped me start understanding that the rule of delegation and being able to release yourself as a leader from all the various roles in an organization. I think it was Henry Ford, Jim, who in an interview I read that some reporter had come in to interview him about how he runs his factories and everything else. And he was sort of a master delegator. He never really knew how to do much, but he hired the people around them that knew everything. The reporter would say something like, "Well, how do you, in the factory and the assembly line, how do you get enough electricity to this source?" And he says, "Well, I don't know, but I have somebody that will." And he had a bunch of buttons on his desk back then, and he hit a button, and he goes, "This person can tell you what this." "Oh, okay. Well, how do you do this and how do you do that?" "I don't know, but I have somebody that can tell you," and he'd hit a button. So I think what I learned early on is the release of being so that active in the business. And as entrepreneurs and as leaders, it's one thing becoming successful by yourself and by your own actions. What true success is becoming successful from other people. And it's so much easier when you're not the most important person in your business. And so I would say that's the one thing I learned, is trying to figure out how I am not the most important person in my business. And it allows me then to become a better leader.
Yeah, donut hole management. You view yourself as nothing in the middle, but you're only good if you surround yourself with it. So you mentioned, like, when you first started delegating, you had somebody who then did the job great. I know a lot of our members, especially a lot of the smaller resellers, they're like, I'm the best salesperson. I'm the business owner. Nobody can do it as well as me. And then they go and hire somebody and say, yeah, they're not doing it like I did. And so they say this doesn't work. Can you talk about how do you overcome that? Like, maybe where you do bump into somebody who isn't doing a good job, is it just simply, well, maybe I need to hire somebody differently. I need to train better. Can you talk about how would you help a leader overcome that obstacle when they start delegating and it's not working? Do you have an experience of having that happen over your career, and what'd you do about it?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. You look at those of us that are parents and have more than one child. You can be the same parent, but all your kids are different. They're motivated differently. Some will mow the lawn exactly the way you want it done. The other kid won't. So everyone kind of reacts differently. So when you're building your people around you, and there comes a point where you might say to yourself, well, this isn't, I've worked with this person. We're not going anywhere. I always said the best leaders are those that never burn bridges and are able to move people when they see a situation where this isn't the right position for somebody. They're able to navigate that, and rather than try to put a round peg in a square hole, I mean a square peg in a round hole, you have to really figure out how. I call it zero-based thinking, meaning knowing what I know about this person now, would I hire this person again? And you're really doing them a disservice by keeping them in a position that isn't working. So in
Yeah.
sales, oftentimes it's the 80-20 rule, in all aspects, not just in, 100 calls, you get 20 contacts. Of 20 contacts, you get 2 appointments and close it. But it also is in people. It really takes 10 people to find two that it's the right position for both sides. And I have I've hired and maintained and trained literally hundreds of people over my career. And I'm very happy to say I've never had a situation where we didn't end the relationship where they shakes my hand, or in a positive way. The way you do that is by communicating with them throughout. Once you're training them and you're working with
Yeah.
them, and you come to this conclusion, Jim, that this is not the right opportunity for them, you have to figure out a way to get out of that situation. And I found a simple method. I call it the broken record method. And also, if you are somebody listening to this podcast, that you're in a situation where you could be representing a company or a product, how do you get out of this situation when you know it's not the right situation? And effective leaders are able to be upfront and honest with people. The way I do it is I bring them into my office or a conference room. I like to be in a neutral location. And again, this shouldn't be news to them, but I simply say, Jim, I've given this a lot of thought, and I've come to the conclusion that this is not the right job for you, and you're not the right person for this job. And I really think you'd be happier doing something else. And I become overly generous. I don't go into all the reasons why they're not doing things, they're not doing right, this isn't working out for you, you're not doing this. And they might say, what about this or what about that? And I'll just say, Jim, again, I've come to the conclusion that this is not the right opportunity for you, and you'd really be happier doing something else. Or if you're in an opportunity that how to get out of, and then eventually you would say the same thing, this isn't the right job for me. I really think you'd be happier if you hired somebody else. You want to leave every situation on a positive note. I've never been sued. I've never left somebody with again, shaking their hand and wishing them best, and be overly generous. Even if somebody didn't do well with your organization, even if you led somebody and it costs you a lot of money, that's on you. You hired that person. You trained them. If it's not work out, it's on you. So be overly generous. I usually give them more than what they expect when it comes to severance or whatever. So I don't know if that's really where you're going with this, Jim, but I think that's once you've done everything you can and given the right tools, the training, there has to be a point where you have to get people in the right position instead of trying to keep getting this person to be in the right position.
Yeah, yes, amen. And so a few things to build on what you said. Sever nice, right? Always sever nice, no matter what. You scream at somebody on the way out. You make sure you sever nice. And it seems like the story that you told where you say, I have concluded, that's at the end of a long, like you said, constant communication, as opposed to building up frustration. I see too many managers do what I call jack in the box management. Dun, 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 and then boom, they pop out and go, I'm upset at these 10 things that you've done. And the person's like, geez, why didn't you tell me after the first one? That's what it sounds like you're talking about. It's frequently holding up the mirror and engaging in a conversation with a person and marching down the path. If they don't improve, you're going on that path. Or if they do improve, they're going to know along the way. That's what it sounds like you're talking about. When you have somebody who's falling below standard, get closer to them and then take whichever path the data shows you to go. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, and you need to do it now. I call it do it now. Whenever I see somebody that's doing something that I don't think is productive, instead of me, thinking about it, going home, it's losing sleep over it, I take care of it now. If I hear someone on the phone, maybe my customer service department, react a certain way, let's say to a merchant, or say something that instead of me sitting about it, well, let's meet. I'm gonna have to meet with this person tomorrow, and I get out of my chair right when they hang up. Hey, let's talk about this. Do it now. Take action. Whenever you see a situation, step in. Now, if there's other people around, I always say, I learned this from the 1 Minute Manager. You reprimand in private. When I say reprimand, I say, what did they do wrong so they don't get defensive? I appraise in public.
Yep.
But do it now. Do it right away so you don't have to go home thinking about it overnight. Oh my God, I can't believe this person did that. What am I going to do? Just do it. Get in front of them.
Yeah, bad news never ages well. We have time for just maybe one or two more questions, and I'm really curious your answer on this one. So you're an accomplished leader and a very confident presenter, right? Anytime I talk with anybody in the industry about the best speakers in our channel, right? If they're mentioning one or two names or three names, your name is always coming up there. But right, so very confident presenter, but every leader has periods of doubt, especially early on in any venture. Can you share with us, if you're willing to, can you talk about a time when you had self-doubt, and then talk about how you overcame that self-doubt?
Well, recently, I would say when the pandemic hit, I think a lot of us were doubting, especially if you're in the hospitality business. what's going to happen. We're doubting the future of our business. And I went back to those same principles where you have to really look at what business you're in. And as a reseller, that's the business I'm in. I'm in the reseller business, and I'm also in the payments business. I'm not in the point of sale software business. So, having that doubt of, restaurants closing down and they don't want to talk about purchasing new POS systems or anything like that, or payments, we're in a panic situation. We really had to shift gears and think about, okay, what is the opportunity? And whenever that doubt happens, I always have to say, what is the opportunity here? What is the opportunity? And think about that. And lo and behold, there was plenty of opportunity. Jim, I found now with COCARD and some of our top offices, if you talk about our top 20% that do 80% of the volume on those 100 offices throughout the country, I would say over the last, 4, 5, 6 years, they've succeeded more at a much rapid rate as a result of that pandemic, because it opened the door to opportunity that they never would have done if there wasn't a pandemic. So just the idea of whenever there's self-doubt, to think to yourself, well, where is the opportunity, will cause you to think about that. So that's one situation I can think of.
Got it. No, thank you. That gets back to the importance of temperance, right? Not just in dealing with people, but in dealing with yourself. Because if you're letting your mind wander and you're just fretting and wringing your hands, you're not going to be able to look for the opportunity. You and I have listened to a lot of speakers. Nobody said like the key is getting frustrated and then everything will fall into place, right? Like that's never a good thing. So, all right, my last question for you. So you mentioned earlier 1 Minute Manager. You mentioned Jack Welch. So there's some leaders that you look up to. I'm curious if you have any mentor or somebody who you work closely with, or somebody you heard speak or read a book. Like, how did they help shape your leadership approach? What did they do or say that's had a lasting impact on you? So if you can talk about a
Ooh,
mentor or leader that you've emulated. Could be somebody early on, could
yeah.
be somebody recent, somebody close, somebody far away.
You know, Jim, I've learned that no one makes it alone. I was, I guess, fortunate to have parents that raised me to be a sort of a critical thinker, a forward thinker, and a father. And we don't choose our parents. So I was fortunate there. But once I got into my teenage years and my 20s, I found my first mentor was a gentleman by the name of Tom Hopkins. Um, I knew I wasn't going to go the normal path of some of my friends through college and go into certain fields, engineering or becoming a doctor, or attorney, or anything. I knew that if I was going to achieve what I wanted to achieve, I had to become an entrepreneur. And to become a successful entrepreneur, the first skill I had to master was how to master the art of selling and persuasion. And so Tom Hopkins was my first mentor. He wrote the book, How to Master the Art of Selling. I learned from Tom Hopkins the art of communication, how to ask questions in sales, how to, close sales. The definition of closing is helping people make decisions that are right for them. So some serious skill based. And I looked at sales as a profession, almost like a doctor, and I studied it. Sales, Jim, is really the oldest profession we have. Now, Jim, some might say there might be another profession that could be the oldest profession in the world. But I would say
that's a different podcast.
I would say that's just a subsection of sales.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Tom Hopkins also taught me things like goal setting, and how to set goals and how to deal with failure and rejection. I talk so much about the joy of failure. I got most of that from Tom Hopkins. The other mentor for me was a guy by the name of Brian Tracy. Brian Tracy taught me how to think. Like my father, being a forward thinker, but even more so, I learned the power of affirmations and how you can program your brain to become, what you want to be. There are a couple of affirmations I love, which is, things like, I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. Or I'm the best. I'm the best. Before every sales call, before every meeting, before I get up and talk, Jim, I always give myself positive affirmations. And another thing I might say is today's going to be a great day. You can do these things while you're brushing your teeth. I wouldn't advise them to do them in public if I'm in the grocery store. I like myself, I like myself. But I learned some of those things from some of these speakers. And I was fortunate enough in my first business, Jim, to travel, and I promoted speakers. Some of the greatest leaders of our time, some of the best coaches of our time. I think of Lou Holtz. One of my favorite mentors was Lou Holtz. Pat Riley was another one, and I got to know them. But I would say the one person that's not alive, you don't have to have a living person to be a mentor. They could be Benjamin Franklin, or, for me, it was an author by the name of James Allen, who wrote the book As a Man Thinketh. That really hit home, and I give that book to all young people who are just getting out in the profession. I'll say, if there's any one book I would recommend, it would be As a Man Thinketh. Because that teaches how you can control your thoughts. Jim, I learned in this book that circumstances do not make the man, they reveal him. Mm-hmm. And so the ability to control your thoughts can control your circumstances. So I would say those are some of the mentors, books, things that have really helped me throughout my career and my leadership.
So thank you for that. And a key point here is Brian Tracy, Tom Hopkins, Lou Holtz, Pat Riley, they did not show up on your doorstep. You had to go get that information. And that's, I guess, I see a lot of leaders, they just kind of go with what they know or what they feel, as opposed to saying, I can actually increase my knowledge and increase my skill so I have, I'm stronger as a leader. It seems like really that's something you've invested serious time into doing that over your career and still do today, if I'm understanding that correctly.
I have, but it's all been self-serving. It's interesting. I get up on the stage and I talk, and most of the things I talk about, even here today, these are not things that I came up with. They're all things that I sought out. And I knew that, if I'm going to be an effective leader, if I'm going to be an effective parent, if I'm going to be an effective coach, if I'm going to have friends that respect me and are happy and have good relationships, I've got to work on myself first. Because it's really hard to be an effective leader, Jim, if you walk in and turn on a light switch. If you don't have balance in your life. Yeah. If you're one of these leaders that's up all night looking at your business and you don't have that balance in your personal life, or if you have a situation where you're not balanced and you can't walk in and all of a sudden be Mr. Happy and turn that switch, because people will read right through that. If you're not sincere, if you're not genuine, and if you're not a happy person, it's really hard to get to lead people because you really can't fake it.
Amen. Well said. Well, that does it for this episode of The Trusted Advisor. If you enjoyed our discussion, be sure to subscribe to the RSPA YouTube channel and the Trusted Advisor podcast so you never miss an episode. Before we go, big thanks again to Dan Brattland for sharing his wisdom with us today. Thanks also to RSPA Marketing Director Chris Arnold for his production work, Joseph McDade for our music, and last but not least, thanks so much to you for listening. Our goal at the RSPA is to accelerate the success of our members in the retail technology ecosystem by providing knowledge and connections. For more information, please visit our website at gorspa.org. Thanks for listening, and goodbye, everybody.